Do you have a good tip for young entrepreneurs on how to look at life?
Well, they're not going into a crisis; they're going to an adventure. Uh, they're going to, and if I tend to tell beginners, whenever you feel afraid, turn it into excitement. It's a very the feeling is not very far. Being afraid or being excited about something. So if you're afraid, sometimes it's a good sign. Be excited. What if it's going to work? And then instead of having negative energy, I'm afraid, and then it turns into a positive energy. Oh, I'm excited towards what's going to happen. Know that it's not always going to work, um, but ride on that wave into the adventure. Um, that's one, and two.
Welcome to another episode of Europreneur, your number one entrepreneurs podcast in Europe, brought to you by the Entrepreneurs Organization. My name is Nir Zavaro. Welcome back to the show. Today, a special guest is a local homeboy from Israel, and we've had the chance to travel different chapters, do different events. One of the best people I know, one of the most fun people I've ever had the pleasure of traveling with. Tomer Treves, how are you?
Good morning, Neil. Thank you for having me.
So every time I bring on guests, most of them for now, or at least until now, I've kind of known, and I still ask everyone to do a short elevator pitch about who you are, where you come from, your businesses, and we'll take it from there. So you ready?
Of course, Neil. Thanks. The toughest thing to do is pronounce my name. It's Tomer, which is like Tom but better. Tomer Treves. I'm an Israeli entrepreneur. I'm about to turn 47 this summer, which I deny. I grew up in Jerusalem, where I spent my entire childhood in high school and university. And after a decade in Tel Aviv, then I moved to a small village right in the middle between the two. And I think it also has to do with my personality. I'm somewhere between the traditional Jerusalem and the party city Tel Aviv. I'm a father of three children. One of them, amazingly, is already 16. The second is 15, and my youngest is 10. And I'm juggling parenthood with entrepreneurship and work all the time. When it comes to business, I'm the co-founder of Adnimation, an Israeli company dealing with ad tech, where we help content publishers become stronger businesses by selling their ad space in a more sophisticated way and for higher prices, and by doing so, increasing their revenue and strengthening their independence as publishers, and I would say helping the world with better access to information. So that's Tomer Treves, Israel, and
That was
Adnimation.
probably the best elevator pitch I've had on this show so far, just so you know.
Thanks.
Question. We always talk about the startup nation, and then a lot of people come to visit Tel Aviv. Do you think there's an entrepreneurial aspect to Jerusalem as being such an old city?
I think growing up in Jerusalem gives you a good perspective about, looking at the world from a different angle. Jerusalem is always full of different languages and cultures and religions. And growing up there, I was exposed to tourists from all over and to all the different aspects, including the difficult ones of Israel. I think it helped me get a wider perspective for things. But since I also spent many years in Tel Aviv, I don't think I wouldn't consider my company as a Jerusalem based, because we're not right in the middle. In fact, geographically, if you take a straight line between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, we are right in the middle. So I would say that our company brings both of these aspects into what we do. The holiness of Jerusalem and the
Because
party life
everybody
of Tel
talks
Aviv.
about remote work, life work balance, and all those. For me as a city boy, I'm now recording from my home office, and my office is about 15 minutes walk from here. How is it to run a company in the middle of nowhere in some sort of a small village. I know it's close, but it's not in a city. You're not in the central district, the business area. How is it?
So, one thing technical and one thing deeper. I would say that technically it's actually easier being outside of the big city because there's less traffic. And most people today don't live in the center of the city. They live in the suburbs and then traveling into the center of the city, whether it's Tel Aviv, Chicago, or London, it's always packed. And when the offices are located outside of the center, there's less traffic. It's easier. Actually, the commute is easier to get here. There's more challenge finding talent, but once you do, they find it much more comfortable than traveling into the city, and then they stay for years. So technically, there are advantages. Uh, Deeper into that, I'm a big believer in teamwork and working from the office. I know it's not very popular today, but I've seen companies who went to work entirely remotely. I see them losing a lot of the benefits of working together and of working at the same time, in terms of synchronization. And so I'm a strong believer in working from the office, and then being located outside of traffic allows us to do that and pull people into the office
I
on a
love
daily
looking at
basis.
everything on the opposite direction. This year you're going to be 47. I wouldn't give you a day over 25. Um, if you look at your old 25, you got the chance to meet him. Do you think this is what he would have imagined? This is being where you live, kids, business? How do you see your life go?
25-year-old Tomer was a young lawyer in Tel Aviv with no kids and married. Thinking he's going to go into politics soon after a short career as a lawyer. Um, 20 years later, I'm not practicing law. I'm not into politics at the moment. I'm not married anymore as well. So many things have changed, but so I don't think this is where exactly I saw myself going. Um, but definitely I knew that I want to do a difference with my life and I want to do things that matter. And in that aspect, I kept that promise to myself. I always try to do things that matter, whether it is in my personal life, in social involvement, and in my work. So in that aspect, I can tell that guy, you're on
Why
track.
did you
Go
study
on.
law then?
Easy choice. Law for me was a wide subject that gives you a good understanding of different aspects: politics, business, social, and for me was a good basic basis to the things that I was planning to do. I did a first degree, a second degree. I invested many years in it, but I practiced it only for a couple of years, knowing that for me this was
Means to
just
an end.
kind of a first.
Interesting.
Yes.
Would you ever think about combining, like today you do tech for publishers? Would you ever consider going and fixing something in the law industry using tech?
Well, my thesis in my second degree was actually about technology and law and the changes that take the technology changes were very fast and the law was changing slowly. So this was exactly what I was thinking of. But the reason I left it, I was doing commercial law, and as a young lawyer, the partner would bring in a napkin, practically a napkin with the highlights of a deal, big deal, millions of dollars, short napkin, and he would give me the napkin and tell me, "Okay, go create the book." And I would, spend a week and come back with a thick book with the agreements and all the appendix. And after 2 years, I told him, "Hey, I want to write the napkin. I'm not interested in turning it into a book." So to do the napkin, you can't be just kind of an outsider looking into the things that matter. You have to jump in and do the business itself. And this is when I decided to leave a fancy office with good benefits of a lawyer, and I went into high tech.
You just left?
Started very low,
You just quit?
doing business development. Yes, yes. Everybody were against it. You can imagine my boss was very sad. My parents were devastated. But I felt that I need to take a step down in order to eventually write the
money.
napkin and not
You decide you want to change your whole life.
just
Now what?
looking.
Like young entrepreneurs listening to this, you're like, quit?
Well, of course, I took it. I took a nosedive. It was, from a fancy office, I went into working what we called an aquarium. Glass walls filled with salespeople, noisy, very long commute. It was the first place I found that gave me a chance in business development. A very low rank, but it took me 2 years to climb up the ladder, back up, and get to a position where I make a
What?
difference in a
Wait, wait. What
Nasdaq
was the
traded
position you
company,
started
managing
with?
many people. I started with it was kind of a fraud. They called it business development manager, and I thought, well, it means I'm a manager. I didn't know that manager is the lowest rank in high tech. You only manage yourself and maybe a process. And my job was to get the company into new markets. A month later, I was already traveling the world, pushing what was back then voice over IP, internet telephony, into new markets globally. It was a fun ride, and I did well and climbed the ladder. And I never left high tech since then. And but it took me about a decade to become
You
independent and
suggest,
to do it on my own.
again, young people listening to this, they should you decide, you change. It's okay to start from scratch. Find the lowest entry point and start going, right?
It was exactly that. When I it was two times I had to start. First, leaving the law world into becoming an employee in high tech. It was a big change, but then a decade later, leaving a comfortable job, with titles and money, and deciding to do things independently. This is a much more frightening jump, I would say, because there's no financial support, there's no promises, there's no
How
salary,
important are
at the end of
titles
the
in your
month.
opinion? Manager, director, so on.
To the young Tomer, they were very important. I remember myself fighting my boss at the first company to get the first VP title, and he was telling me, "Why do you need VP? You're managing 80 people here, and then we have the India office and the New York office, and you control so many things. This is a public traded company. We don't just hand out VPs." And I was very strong minded about it. I thought this is gonna pave a path for me in my CV. Today, in my own company, I barely have a title. Officially, I think I'm CBO, Chief Business Officer. My partner Malo is the CEO. CBO is not a real title, I think. For me, what really matters is that I know what I'm supposed to do. My team knows they can trust me, and we work towards a goal. So, as a grown up, I'm not that keen on titles, but I do understand why today my team do need the titles and kind of the
Yeah,
affirmation of what
it's
they
an
achieved
external thing.
to
You want
take
to
it with
give a
them.
card or a title or your email where people know like your high rank. They're not just talking to anyone, right? They're talking to a director, a VP, a C.
Exactly. They believe. I don't think they need it to do their job here. They think they're
Mm.
gonna need it for their next jump.
So you can
Take it
maybe
with
when
them.
people leave, you give them an upgrade on the title and then they leave. That's fine.
But they need to show for how many years they did that title. So
It's always interesting. I don't know if you remember. I don't have my title says Chief of Happiness. I don't care about the titles, and I never thought it mattered. But on the other hand, I never had a position where I needed those. I've been my own. I'm a sole entrepreneur for the last, I don't know, 12, 13 years. I never needed a title. So it's always interesting. But then I feel I meet young people, they're freelancers, and it says CEO, co founder, and they're alone. Do you think that's still important? That qualifies? They need that?
I think the answer is in the question. Of course, when you're a freelancer, you're not supposed to call yourself the CEO. Um, it does help. Some freelancers, after several years, want to start doing something more steady, and then they need to retell their story when they want to get hired. And I think here it's about storytelling. When you present yourself, we started with a short pitch, so you need to have a good pitch with a good story. And then titles sometimes help use less words to describe what you did. But obviously, if the story is empty of real content, then it won't work. You need to find a way to, for the freelancer, when they want to present themselves, calling themselves a CEO is a short story, but it's not a good one. I believe that they should improve the story
So you
with better
leave
terms.
a well-paying international position. Second time you need to start from scratch, no salary, no guarantees. What makes you leave and start your own journey?
Um, to be truthful here, although I do know many strangers will maybe watch this one day, my dream back then was to do politics. Um, I had a dream of improving life in Israel to making it a worthy place to live in, and maybe even one day bring peace to the people of Israel. And I had several rounds at politics, and in all of them, I met the harsh reality that if you're not very independent financially, you can't do real change, because once you start touching pain points, then you get threats, and you have a family, and you have to make sure that you'll be able to support them for in the future as well. So you can't really touch the pain points and do real change. So my dream was to make enough money to be independent and then go back into politics and create positive change. And I realized that as an employee, it wasn't possible. I did the math. I said in 10 years of working as for someone else, I won't make enough money to go back into social involvement and doing change in the world. And then I said, okay, but maybe if I start my own business, um, I'll be able to do it. So this is why. So I actually did it for, you know, practically for the money, but with an end goal of having enough money to go back into
It's
being a
interesting.
public servant.
I'm listening. This is the second time I'm hearing means to an end, but you're willing to put in the work for years.
Yeah, I did. I had a long plan. I always appreciated more politicians who did it as a second career, not someone who grew up as a politician and never took a mortgage, never had to stand in line in the bank to get a loan, or to buy in the supermarket and not have enough money, or to buy their own house. Just they just kind of were raised as politicians. I appreciated people who did well for themselves in one career, and then as a second career, they decided to devote themselves for the greater good. So this is how I saw myself. Say, okay, I'm not going to be a politician now. I'll do it, closer to my pension. And that's why I started the company as looking. I knew it's going to take years, um, but I didn't. I wasn't sure it's going to take so many years. It's going to be. We're now. I started late 2013, so we're around 8 9 years now. I'm going to test myself when I reach the decade point at the end of 2023 and see
I would
how
love to
ready
have
I
you as a
am
guest again in a
for the
year's
next
time and
stage.
see where you are. I think it'd be interesting.
Just put it in our calendar and end of 23.
I'm in. That'd be like I don't know 100 episodes or something. And you know, you leave work, you decide to go into the concept of entrepreneurship, building your own business. Um, Most kindergarten kids, if you ask them what they want to be when they grow up, don't say owning a publishing company. So, how did you find this? Why this? How did you find your co-founder?
Well, first of all, why this? There are many ways to make money in technology, and Israel had amazing inventions in health and in technology, and back then Israel just gave to the world voice over IP and ways and so many other things. But also a lot of technologies for gambling and for the dark side of the internet, I will say. And I knew that I wanted to do something on the clean side. That if I'm in it for the money, at least I want to feel good about myself when I come to the office every morning. And from the companies I did work for, I saw that there was a big change in freedom of people were able to say anything. Like online, but people would not hear it. I would call it freedom of access to information. It's not just freedom of speech. You have to have freedom of access to information as well to make freedom of speech work. And I saw from what I was doing that publishers of content online were struggling as businesses. They were the core of the growing internet. Without the publishers, there's nothing. There's no news, nor sports, nor recipes. But all the money that was pouring into online from the TV world, from the radio, everything was going into digital. It was not reaching the publishers themselves. It was getting stuck with the intermediaries, with the different companies, and I wanted to help them, like the publishers, because I believe that if they become stronger, then there's more information available for everyone, and it's real information. It's not. Back then they didn't call it fake news, but it was definitely not independent news. If you're trying to do the local news, but you don't have enough money to pay to the editors and to the writers, then it's not local news, it's sponsored content. You have to sell yourself and you struggle as a business and you don't reach enough people. And this is exactly what Adnimation set up to do when we started. We said we're going to help publishers make more money. If they have more money, they will be able to bring in more writers, more editors, to be independent. And so we developed technology and methodologies to help them sell their ad space in a smarter way and make more money. And we do it until today. When I start working with a publisher, they like us because we take the ad tech headache off their shoulders. They don't have to deal with it anymore. They don't like it. But when they see the money coming in, they love us. Normally we would double their ad revenue
It's very
and become
similar
their main
to
source of revenue.
politicians, right? Like
And it's
you're
a big
saying,
change.
you need the money in order to do good. You need to give them the budgets in order to be independent, bring on better reporters, more reporters, and so on. So that's interesting. Uh,
Yeah.
you
So
mentioned
yeah,
that
so we are enablers in that way.
when they see you're taking the headache out, bringing in more revenue, and then they like you. So here's my question. When you reach out to a publisher, basically, why should they say no? You're offering free money. Is it an easy sell?
It's a great question. And you know what? It's a great question. Our conversion rate on sales calls is the highest I've ever heard of. When I'm on a call with a publisher, either me or one of our great account executives and salespeople, the success rate is over 50%. More than one in two joins animation, and actually the lifetime is measured in years. Like more than one in two would sign the agreement, become a partner, and hand over their entire sales process to animation and stay for years. It's a very good pitch. So you'd say, okay, so why aren't you huge at the moment? Because it's very hard to talk to them. Um, Again, when we talk to a publisher, they love the offer, they love the service, they sign up, they stay for years. But as any other business, they are bombarded with offers all the time, and it's very difficult to stay attuned or to listen to offers that you get as a business owner, whether you own a small store, a tech company, or if you're a publisher. You need to do your work, and you're always bombarded with offers. I can do that for you. People with stories, with offers, and eventually we tend to just stop listening. And I need to do my work. If I now answer 1,000 emails a day, I'll never be able to do my job. So, I have a list of 10,000 relevant publishers that if they partner with us, will double the revenue. If I can speak with 10,000, I'll have at least 5,000 new partners this year. But eventually, I managed to speak with 500. So during the year, so instead of 5,000. So my biggest challenges is getting to their ears and getting 15 times of their interested time.
When a startup raises funds, let's say Series A and stuff like that in Israel, they would be bombarded once the PR is out, regardless of when they actually raise the round. But let's say 6 months after they raise, they do the PR because they need to hire more employees, more developers. 200 emails a day. Marketing agencies, PR agencies, people offering services, cleaning services for the office, real estate, everybody's now bombarding them to get a piece of the action. And my agency, we wanted to reach out, but we were looking for something interesting to do. So we decided to do offline. So here's my suggestion to you. We're sending boxes, and in the box, and it's branded with my company and everything. In the box, there's an envelope, or sorry, a postcard that says coffee question mark, and on the back is the offer we have for them and what we saw and why, handwritten, with 2 cups of espresso. And I end the note by I love to have coffee. Of course, coffee's on me. And so offline works amazingly well because everybody now is trying to do digital in a sense. And you would be surprised, it costs a tenth of what it would cost me to target them on LinkedIn to get an actual sale.
Oh, definitely. I'm not surprised. I actually did try several offline approaches. I even, believe it or not, did the old way of flying over and knocking on doors. I'm not shying anything. Anything that will help me speak with the right people, we would try it. Definitely taking the espresso idea, but I'll probably have to do a twist to our world.
We once did with a real estate company for investors. So qualified investors, we sent a bottle of whiskey with their name on it and not to be opened before. And that's the date where the project ends in 5 years' time. So people would put it on their table.
Yeah, I once sent to a company in India the most expensive whiskey bottle that we could find, but it was stuck in customs and someone else drank it. So I'm not sure I'm going to do that. The trouble is, it's all very international. Our target market is North America, and we're in Israel, so I can't offer them a coffee. It's not going to,
Yeah.
be realistic. But I need to find
You mentioned
ways to do that.
starting this idea and all that. How did you find your co founder, for example?
Um, Funny story. We both lived in the same village, um, and we ran together to the local community management. So we met like in a very small political meeting at a neighbor's house, and I was just starting the technology, and he was working in a big publisher. He was VP of the Jerusalem Post, and I said, "Hey, I need an alpha site to run the first technology." And he said, "Sure, why not? We're neighbors. I'll help out." And from that, we started thinking of doing something together. Um, we were we came up with an idea. We started pitching it to investors. It wasn't really successful, and my money already ran out. I was working on thin air. And then one day we're driving in a car after saying no to an investor, somebody who actually wanted to invest, and we refused. And I knew I had no more money left. I had kids. And then he got a call from someone who was saying, "Hey, my a friend of mine's who lives in New York, their babysitter is a college student. She has a blog that's doing well, but they need help in monetizing the blog." So my partner Maol said, "Hey, what do you want from me?" I'm like, "I'm not going to help a student in New York." And it was on a speaker. And I told him, wait, I ran out of money. Tell them I'll call her and try to help her. Maybe we'll make a few dollars. And that evening, I called that babysitter, uh, and she and two of her friends had a very successful, post college blog for young women. And I told them, "Sure, I'm going to help you make money." There was a lot of Israeli chutzpah in it because I had a laptop practically as, and I said, "Yeah, well, we're going to help you make more money so you can grow and become a real media company." And that's how we acquired our first customer. We did very well for them. Um, and a week later, one of the partners that was trying to sell ads to said, "Hey, I'm not going to pay those girls so much, but I have someone else who needs someone like you to haggle for them." So he brought us our second customer. A few weeks later, we saw we were doing well. Mahol quit his job, and we decided to focus on that. And this actually turned our business to be it wasn't VC backed because we started as kind of a side project to finance our main one, and so we never raised any funds, and we did everything very thin and garage like from the stories from the legends.
I love the lean concepts. Do you think people are over? evaluating the fact that they need VCs, they need money?
When you say lean, you imagine the Toyota inspired stories of how they do very good management. You don't really think lean as we were lean. Lean for us was our first office was a wooden shack that we built at the backyard of Moe's parents with no toilet and no windows. It was a wooden box. We sat in it and no salaries, of course. And for months we worked with with no compensation, just trusting ourselves that we'll be able to do that. And any few dollars that we were managing to sell, we would bring in more people and to do more technology and more. Eventually, we were five people sitting in that box, touching each other's legs while seating. And it's not as glamorous as high tech sounds, and it's much thinner than lean is. But this it forced us into a way of thinking always on profit first. That's another method, of course, but we did it instinctively. We needed profit first because otherwise we wouldn't have enough money to feed our kids. It wasn't because we read the book Profit First and worked like that. I read it years later. We did it because we just needed to do profit. And it's very, very different than VC backed companies. When you have investors' money, you start by taking an amazing office downtown Tel Aviv and spend money on hiring many people as fast as you can, not focusing on the right talent necessarily. And the investors push you to raise more money. So you have to spend everything very, very fast just to raise more. I think it drives you away from the goal of making money, of making a profit eventually. Um, I'm not against that model. I think it's a very important model when you have a big project to develop. If you need to come up with a new medicine, or to develop a new chip. And it takes years of engineers or doctors, then you need investors' money. But if you're starting a company with technology which is faster, like in ad tech or gambling, or God forbid, I'm against gambling, or if you want to do a date app, I think the much faster way to success is to think very, very lean, come up with the MVP, and run to the market and push it to make money so you'll have enough to
Do you
grow
miss those days?
instead of taking investors' money. And from my experience with
Five
of
people,
what of
five
being
people
lean,
crammed in a
we
room in the
still
heat.
are.
Do you miss those days?
Today, so now it's not five, it's 25, and it's not a room. We have a nice office. Um, and I sometimes miss those days. I don't miss the fleas. We used to have a few, but I think we kept as a culture in the company. We still have that culture. Like we eat together, and the young guys go out together, and we have this. The spirit remained, and if we talked about younger people listening to this and thinking about their business, I would recommend, if you can, I wouldn't run to raise funds. Start in doing it as leaner as you can. Get to the market, start making money. Even if you do need investor money, if you're in a stronger point, a year forward, you probably have much better terms than if you do it, day one. I don't think day one should be raising money.
So, side hustle, you're in. Do you think most people should start a side hustle before they decide to quit their jobs, before they decide to sit in a coffee shop with an idea for a startup that only needs 5 million to get off the ground? I love side hustles. I've always had side hustles.
I don't. I think that as long as you work somewhere and you have a guaranteed check coming in as a salary at the end of the month, you probably won't do enough to start your own business. Because, well, if you're a good person, you'll devote your 90% to the job. If you start something and you really put your heart into it, then you're betraying your employer. That's not right. Like, you're committed to your job, you should do it. If you're just there for the money, then you're not doing your job and you shouldn't. But also, most chances is that your project won't succeed as well because you won't have enough drive to do it. I think the best drive is if you have no other option. If you have to put food on the table next month, then you work like you should be working.
So, back against the wall is a good concept. being with your back against the wall?
Um, Back against the wall means that you don't have other options. I'd rather think about instead of thinking about my back, think about my eyes on the prize. That's how I would put it. Eyes on the prize is a good option. Looking forward to what you want to achieve, not just that I have no options. I'm focused on what I want to achieve.
I think it's interesting. I see so many young people who say, I want to be successful, I want to be rich, I want to do this, but they forget the 10 years it takes, right? There's this meme by Michael Jackson about all the stuff he's done. There's Lionel Messi. There's Michael Jordan. I missed this and this and this and this to win this. And I think we're praising failure very fast. Ah, yeah, I failed. Now it's fun, but we're forgetting the grit to keep going over and over. I assume you've had some tough times in your business, especially when you're not venture backed, when you said, "Oh, I'm not sure if we're going to make it."
Listen, when COVID hit, on 1 month into COVID, companies had to limit their expenses. The first thing that you can stop is advertising. Before everything, advertising is flexible, and advertising prices dropped in a day by at least 50%. Entire industries stopped advertising altogether. There was no travel, there were no new movies, no one was going to buy a new car and a new house. The, Everything disappeared in days. And the first thing that we could do was let everybody go, fire everyone to get money from the government, shrink back to being just the two co-founders, survive COVID, and hope for better days. Um, we did the opposite. We kept all our team full time. We never sent them home for a day. In fact, as much as we could, we even kept the office open. So if you wanted, you can come work from the office and not from home. Um, because we were enablers supporting news sites, then we had this exemption and we could keep working from the office. And we believe that the company is the sum of its parts, and then the end of the day, it's the people. And if we send 20 people home, we're what are we? Why are we here for? So we kept paying full salaries even to people who couldn't come to work, um, and we had to struggle. And of course, when people imagine the success of a company, they don't imagine that. Hell, sitting together, needing to pay salaries next month, no governmental funds, no help, no advertising out there. So our entire technology was running on thin air. Definitely hard times. Um, and yes, people don't imagine that when they start a company, but they need to know that it's going to be there. If it's a pandemic or if it's any, there are always things that happen. Um, but to be happy, it, there's not. I don't believe there's a state of happiness. I'm happy all the time. Life is ups and downs, and you need to have more ups than downs. And it's the same for a company. I think the success is if we have more good months than bad months, then we're successful.
I completely agree. What I say, for me at least, in the concept of this title of Chief of Happiness is not about being happy all the time. It's about being more self aware and trying to shorten the amount of time I'm not happy and lengthen the amount of time I am happy. And same goes for what you want to bring out to, I don't know, people or the audience. And it's interesting going into what people think might be a crisis, a recession, or stuff. Do you have a good tip for young entrepreneurs on how to look at life?
Well, they're not going into a crisis; they're going to an adventure. Um, they're going to, and if I tend to tell beginners, whenever you feel afraid, turn it into excitement. It's a very the feeling is not very far. Being afraid or being excited about something. So if you're afraid, sometimes it's a good sign. Be excited. What if it's going to work? And then instead of having negative energy, oh, I'm afraid, and then it turns into a positive energy. Oh, I'm excited towards what's going to happen. Know that it's not always going to work, um, but ride on that wave into the adventure. That's one, and two. Don't go alone. For me personally, at the beginning, I thought alone is better. I'm a fast thinker. I can do everything. Someone is just going to slow me down. Leave me a full night. I can develop something that didn't exist before. And if I had to explain it to someone else, it will take me double the time. Um, I was naive and arrogant. Looking back, you know, if you work with good people, you can achieve much more and for much longer time. So whether it's if it's relevant for your company, then have partners and talent people working with you. And if you still can do it, then we're here for EO. For me, EO played that part for many years. My forum at EO, I had a bunch of entrepreneurs that I would meet every month and would work with me on things. And I'd learn from their experience and they will, I would keep growing with them. So I was never alone. So for me, this was also an important aspect of work and success.
First of all, I love your answer. I think it's so inspiring. And this week we were sitting at the office. I always hire juniors. There's something about teaching. I love it. I teach at colleges, universities for years, but there's something about looking at the office and seeing five new young people. They just came in. They have no idea. We don't know what they're going to be good at. So we're trying and testing. And I was very happy about what I saw. And half of them still feel lost. It's their first week. They're kind of figuring it out. And I'm like, don't worry about it. You'll find it. And as for my form, I completely agree. I just finished my 30-day challenge of running. So I ran every day for 30 days. I'm sitting because I can't stand up anymore. But it's been amazing to every night send that to my form and get that feedback. Well, keep going, keep going, keep going. And you can get that from your friends, but it's not the same impact. You know what I mean? Um, I want to ask you something about you're in a fast moving industry. Things change all the time. Technology, the way things work, news, and so on. Um, how do you keep updated on relevant things?
Um, Maybe I'm not. No, I'm kidding. I guess I am updated on things that are important. Um, it takes me back to the people always ask, how do you have time for the EO activities? And you say, you're so busy. You run three companies. You have a family. How do you have time? And it's always like if you don't invest the needed time in yourself, then you're not going to do well in anything else that you do. If I don't stop for 5 minutes to do some workout in the morning, I'll probably be tired for the entire morning and not energetic enough to do the things that I need to do. So it's the same with keeping yourself updated and learning. If I stop learning, I'm not going to do good enough for my team, for my family. And in 2 months from now, I'm actually living up to my dream. I'm going to Harvard to a EO plan to do several days of learning, with the best teachers in the world about business and growth. And it's very hard to find a whole week to leave everything. It costs a lot of money, but I know that I'm gonna come back better. I did it a few years back with London Business School, and the things I learned there, I still execute every day in my work and in my life.
It's interesting. I'm
So
leaving
you
on
make the time and you come
to
back
have
better.
the regional leadership academy in Turkey, in Cappadocia, in September. And I remember when I joined the EO, spending that money on top of the membership and everything seemed impossible. Like, who's going to spend so much money? And every year I pick something and I go. And I think you and I can agree that it's not just about you take one small thing from every event. It's amazing. You meet people. That's amazing. Like, but you improve. If you look over the span of, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, the amount of things we've learned and adapted to changed, I think, I love it. There's something about it.
Yeah. When you stop growing, you stop living, at least for me.
So 10 years time, you're in politics.
I'm not sure anymore. The world has changed in the last decade. The focal points of power have shifted. Today, politicians can many times find themselves not influencing anymore, while chiefs of industry inflict change in the lives of thousands. Um, and a good writer can change the lives of millions, while a politician can spend a lifetime changing nothing. So I'm not certain anymore that it's necessarily going to be in politics, but it's definitely going to be in creating change and improving lives of people. And I've stopped searching actively. I know it's going to come when I'm ready, and I'm still focused on finishing this project of becoming financially independent and helping publishers become better businesses. And I'm celebrating the fact that it's working well. And I know next few years are going to be interesting as well.
I've heard you speak many times, and I have to say the last 45 minutes have been very interesting. I love the way you speak. There's something, I think you're a very good orator, but I've also seen you deal with different crises, or as you like to call them, adventures. And would you write a book?
Yes, you can count on that. There will be a book involved, probably. Um, my biggest concern is that people don't read enough. So a book is a title for, you need to create content that people will consume. How does content today? Phew, you're an expert in that. Maybe we should do another call on that. If you have a good idea and you want many people to hear it, is it a book? Is it a TV series? Is it an online thing? We'll need to talk about it.
Uh, I'll share with you that I'm finishing my draft for my upcoming book with the fuck the slides, and I believe this will impact millions of people, and that's why I do it. I can honestly say I'm not enjoying the process. I find every possible excuse. Like I decided I'm not shaving my beard until the draft is done. So every time I meet people on the street, they're like, "You still have this beard? Go home and write." But I'll still find excuses. I'll sit at home, write, and then I think I need to trim the right side. You'll find different excuses not to write. But I understand that if it's done properly, it has an impact on thousands of entrepreneurs, of people who want to raise funds, and then it's on their employees, and then the product that they're going to build. And I say, you know what? Stick through it. Keep going.
But do people still read books?
Yes,
Is it going to be a traditional book with pages and everything?
you would be surprised. I gave a talk in Collision in Toronto last month. No, sorry, June, and people met me afterwards. They saw me with the T-shirt, and they said, "Oh, I there wasn't enough room in the talk, but here's a question for you. I can't find your book on Amazon." And I said, "Yeah, the book's not out yet." And they're like, "What? I've been trying to." So I think people want to consume specific content in a very certain way. And by the way, I think that's why I'm delaying the book all the time, because it's a methodology and not just another book, you know? Because you read the book, you'll take one or two things. That's nice, but you just spend, I don't know, hours on reading. And then you do the audible version. So I think also books are changing in that sense, right?
Of course.
So it's very interesting to do. Would you write a self-help book, an autobiography, or a novel?
Well, we're getting short on time. One of my businesses, I also own a bookstore, um, an online bookstore of digital books. So I definitely have access to all those kinds of books. It's definitely not an autobiography, but also not self help. So what was the
A
third
novel.
option? Yeah,
My
probably.
books are on your shop,
And,
on your store. They're there.
uh, and I have to join those people who tell you that you need to get a
Yeah.
shave. At least trim it.
Dude, this is after trimming. This is from this morning. I'm so happy this will also have an audio version on the podcast.
So finish this book
Next
already.
week. Next week, I'm done. Listen, Toma, we both have to go. I want to say a huge thank you. Last question. Something you want to tell the people that I might have forgotten? Last words?
It's very far from my last words. We're going to keep on talking forever. Um, but I want to open my door. If anybody's listening and they have question about how do I start, how do I go lean, how do I not raise funds, how do I, keep my kids happy while I work a lot, I'm very accessible through through my sites, and I'm happy to talk with people that are just beginning. I'm welcoming questions and continued
I think you and
conversation.
I will do a 1 hour live webinar soon about how to survive without raising. That would be
Sure.
interesting.
I hope I survive until then.
Thank you, man. It was inspiring. Love you. See you soon. Guys, thank you very much for watching, listening. If you ever need anything, go to the website, eoeurope.com. Would be happy to help you. If you're interested to listen, hear more about the organization, also feel free to reach out to us. And next time, thank you.
Thank you, Zavalo.